Okay, so Ezekiel chapter 16. Again, I'm piecing this together in a way that's consistent with God's wisdom, in a way that is not taken out of context. Ezekiel, like the other prophets, was told by God to speak to the Jews in riddles. We see that with Isaiah as well, and we see that they're using the same kind of pattern and language that the other prophets are using. So they're speaking to them to a large degree in a way that's figurative. But it's not as much of a riddle as you might think. So in Ezekiel chapter 16, we see in verses 27 and 35 through 44 that the Jews are given to their enemies for adultery, for their adultery, right? For their idolatry, which is also referred to as adultery. We'll see that in the next chapter in a second here. Now, it's not talking about them being taken physically per se. It's talking about the idols themselves and their spirits being the enemies of the Jewish people. Okay, in the story, what have you. I know there's a lot of controversy over who the Jewish people are, but let's just keep it simple here. So, what ends up happening is they start taking on the ways of the foreigners, which ruins them. Ezekiel talks about that pretty extensively in the book of Ezekiel. So it's saying that they're given to the enemies for their idolatry, and they become part of the enemy's spirits, regardless if they're in Israel or in America, in Africa, wherever they are. Okay? And that is the masses of them on the broad path, who are also persecuting the ones, if there's any ones, right? In a sense, I'm part Jewish in a sense, so on and so forth. They're persecuting the one or the ones on the narrow path. And no one is obeying God through me, so the simple matter is it's just me, right? I'm the only one walking in God's path is the simple answer. Now, you see that in Galatians 4, where it says the worldly Jews are persecuting the Jews who are right with God, the Jew or Jews. Okay. And we also see in the New Testament that Christ is a character in the story. It says, how can you who are evil say anything good? And he says, even though you're evil, you know how to give gifts to your children, and so on and so forth. He's calling people evil, including his disciples to some degree. So in Ezekiel chapter 17, verses 16 through 22, we see how it talks about Jerusalem used its beauty. It used the things that God taught it, right? The Jews, Jerusalem, the city, the people, the leaders, to kind of make themselves look good, and they refuse to clean the inside of the cup and dish like it says they should do in Matthew 23 in the New Testament, but instead focused on the outside, on appearances instead of application and devotion and faithfulness and justice. So that blows up in their face, and their enemies, they start hating their enemies, and their enemies start punishing them, and vice versa. So these demons are punishing the demon in them of rebellion, these false idols, and vice versa. And that's what Revelation 20 is very much about. Now, in Ezekiel chapter 19, it's a lament over Israel's princes, and again it talks about how they're trapped with hooks by the nations, more specifically the idols of the nations, which led them astray. So again, real quickly here, in Ezekiel, let's just go over the idol part here. Ezekiel chapter 5, because of their idolatry, right? Verses 14 through end, they're made a ruin and reproach. Ezekiel chapter 6, verses 3 through 7, they're spiritually slain in front of their idols. In Ezekiel chapter 11, verse 21, their idolatry is said to be brought down on their own heads, right? So God is intending to punish them because of their idolatry. In Ezekiel chapter 14, the most important chapter in Ezekiel, arguably, verses 7 through 11, God makes it crystal clear that he's going to lead them astray through their idols, and he says it more than once. He overkills it. Ezekiel chapter 16, verses 27 and 35 through 44, they're given to their enemies because they keep going on the path of idolatry, which leads them to the evil spirits of their enemies governing them one way or another. And Ezekiel chapter 17, verses 16 through 22, Jerusalem used its beauty, the inner beauty that it cultivated, to attract evil people. And then they focus on their outer beauty, and it blew up in their faces, right? And they become abused by the idolaters and vice versa. In Ezekiel chapter 19, it's a lament over Israel's princes, as they're said to be trapped with hooks. Their leaders, their people, following their leaders, what have you. They're trapped with hooks and led astray by these evil principles, leaders, spirits, false idols, what have you. Ways, customs, behaviors, sentiments, emotions, and the principles of evil of these other nations and their idols. And we see that to this day. Even Israel was made by the Balfour Declaration, which involved Lord Rothschild and various Jews and Gentiles who were plotting to make the Jewish people a very Gentile-thinking group of people. Whether or not you believe that the Jews in Israel are the real Jews, what have you. So one way or another, Jew or Gentile, that is their path. So now when you worship idols, right? Let's say you worship Malbolgia, this demon that was depicted in the movie Spawn. They referred to him as a demon. He was a demon, right? Asmodeus is said to be a demon of lust. Beelzebub. If you worship one of these demons, that you become like that demon. And that you are like a demon. You're like a gate or a vessel for demons abusing people. So you're expressing that demon in the world. If you're expressing that demon in the world, whether or not you're slaughtering Palestinian children directly, whether or not you've ever served in the IDF, you are still part of the demon collection, right? Worship, right? And worship. We are ship. You're on board. You're part and parcel. You're complicit. You're helping them do it to varying degrees. And part of that demon ship, that demon collection, that demon formation are people, the masses of Jews who are controlled opposition, the masses of Jews who say they don't approve of the war. Whether they approve of the war or disapprove of the war, instead of coming and obeying God through me, they're conveying a demon. And they also benefit more from Gaza because part of the world that's being forged is a world of white, Jewish, and LGBT supremacy. And then when they reproduce, it overkills. You see what I'm saying? They're reproducing Jews who are outside the divine order, who they're raising to be outside the divine order. And after my flesh dies, there will be no one to lead them no matter what. The 7 seals, they're sealed out of heaven. We see in Zechariah, wickedness, right? A house is being built for the Babylonian people, who's symbolized by wickedness in the basket. And there's a lead cover put over it. It's sealed in. That's figurative for the planet, right? Isaiah 24, then the earth sinks never to rise again. Isaiah 34, all the nations are destroyed for this idolatry because they're channeling demons of rebellion. Be it some martial art action hero in popular culture, be it MAGA fans, woke, Antifa, Proud Boys, be it the average American cowboy or skater. They're all identifying as those things instead of living universal pinpointed moral precision like I am, and first and foremost being in the divine order, and thus authentically and sincerely and in a genuine manner identifying as a person of God with the mark of God on their forehead instead of the mark of the beast, which also goes back to Ezekiel, which goes back to the 665 days and the six men or angels with the weapons of God to destroy those who do not have the mark of God. That's what Revelation is referring to. The mark of God versus the Babylonian system and its satanic mark of the devil. And Babylon had these idols that went throughout the world, especially through Greece and Rome, right? Jupiter, the main deity of Rome, was Baal's equivalent. And it's, the idolaters weren't just people who went to the cult of Jupiter. They're people who went into the Roman culture, right? Cult and culture. The extension of the cult was the culture. And we see in the Bible it talks about the sacred inner chamber, the outer chamber and the inner chamber, the outer temple and the inner temple. So you're part of the battleship of the devil when you're not obeying God through me. You're part of the outer or inner temple of the devil when you're not obeying God through me. You're part of the formation, the form, the life form. The word for and form are connected. And formula, formulae, which goes back to a very key proof here. Set in Egyptian mythology is Baal's Egyptian equivalent, and he's said to testify against himself. And we see in the phrase martial arts, when we scramble it, we get marital star, above other things. You also get marital rats and all this stuff. You got to see the truth and the lie. What is the truth? The truth is that the sun is also considered a star by countless scientists. And we see in Psalm 19 that the sun is the symbol of the bridegroom. Okay? So when we're talking about martial arts and we're connecting it to the marital star, that is the sun which symbolizes God and the bridegroom in Psalm 19. And also in Malachi, look up the Malachi, the phrase, the sun in righteousness. The sun in righteousness. Not someone misrepresenting the sun or worshiping the sun, but doing everything justice, instead of doing the wrong thing. And that includes putting God first and his divine order, right? A martial art order, right? Rank. Kuro Obi means black belt. And Obi in Igbo means King Hard Hut, Essence Center, Temple Core. But just like in Western culture, which king? The one who's acknowledged by the world at this point? No. The one who's established a throne in justice, the divine king, the divine heart, the divine center, the divine core, the life, the way, the truth, and the life. That divine sort of indigenous and potent, righteous martial art king, that's me. There's no other way it could be when you consider doing the situation justice. Again, Luke 12:57. Why don't you judge for yourselves what is right? When you look at this, is it right for them to cover it up? To code it in their words and to occult it? Occult means hidden in plain view. Is that the right thing to do? Or is the right thing to do to explain these things to you so you can have informed consent and make a sound decision for yourselves and your families? So anyone who's trying to cover this up is trying to scatter anyone who otherwise would obey God through me. And whoever doesn't gather with me scatters. And to marshal, spelled differently, means to order and to arrange, to gather. So martial arts, the divine martial arts, the heavenly warrior defeats the beast of God. To gather God's children for God versus to be in a secret society and to suppress the truth, or to behave like you're in a secret society and to suppress the truth. That makes one the enemy of God, and that's a profound, profound disgrace. The light of the world versus the darkness. And in the Bible it says Satan tries to blind the minds of people so they don't see the glory of God. And the glory of God is monotheistic, real African falcon martial arts. Ham begot Cush, Cush begot Nimrod. Nimrod was a mighty warrior before the Lord. And the proverbial saying that Jews would say to each other is, like Nimrod, a mighty warrior before the Lord. What is the Spirit of God? Like Nimrod, a mighty warrior spirit. Exodus 15:3, the Lord is a warrior, the Lord is his name. Isaiah 42:13, right? The Lord marches out like a champion, a martial champion, connecting Psalm 18 to Psalm 19, etc. So when you look at this thing, we see that the Jewish people, with all their money and power as a group on the broad path, not any individual who might obey God through me, they are suppressing this. They have the money to expose it, and they chose to suppress it, which means they have violated the covenant with God in an irreversible and unforgivable way. They do not represent God. They represent the masses of Jews in the Bible who were channeling the demons of the false idols that they accepted into their hearts, into their souls, and into their minds. There is no other way to look at it. And in the name of God, I command you all to obey God through me, or accept that you and your offspring will cook, and your souls will cook in hell. When I say you and your offspring will cook, I mean your souls, not your flesh. I don't give a damn about your flesh. Your souls will cook in hell. Because what you have done is so profoundly evil, so profoundly unforgivable, and you've lied about God Almighty. Who could forgive that? Certainly not the Son of God. Thank you.